Hello, lovely. We're up to day 4 of our look at Atomic Habits, the book by James Clear that so many people swear by as being really helpful for them for putting into habits. So I thought it was time for us to take a deep dive into it and see what we might be able to get out of it. So really, I'm just giving you my perception of what I'm reading and how I might put it into action, and really trying to bring out the practical elements of it that we can use to put in some of those great habits that we know we need to have. So I'm up to chapter 3 in the book, and we're starting to get now into the nitty-gritty of habits themselves. Previously, on my last few lives, we talked about how important and how effective processes are compared to goals, and how we also need to include our identity in anything that we're doing. So we need our identity needs to be aligned with the goal. The story we tell ourselves needs to be aligned with the goal that we're trying to reach, so that we actually do the things, because otherwise we're just going to sabotage ourselves. So now in chapter 3, James gets down to a bit more about how habits work. And I have to say that some of this is more theory than practice. So I'm struggling a bit with this bit, but I think what will happen is that in the chapters that follow, we're going to go into more detail around them, which will be more helpful. So bear with me on this. If you think that if your brain works like mine does, you might also feel the same, like this isn't necessarily really taking us anywhere. But let's go through the process. So the point of this chapter is reminding us that the brain makes shortcuts so it can get things done. Just like, we don't have to think every day how to tie our shoelaces, right? Our brain's figured that out. It's a shortcut. It no longer wastes any of its conscious energy on figuring out how you tie a shoelace. So a habit is sort of when you've figured out what works and it becomes part of your whole subconscious mind, allowing your conscious mind to get on with doing other great, lovely, creative things, hopefully. So key habits, key points that he says. One is for us to recognize that habits don't restrict our freedom. It creates freedom. Because I know for some of you, that might be, for me, I like habits and I like ritual, but I know that's not the case for everyone. Sometimes they find that habits, they feel restrictive. So I guess what he's asking you to think about is if you can do these things without thinking, like tying your shoelaces, that does free you up for time to do other things. So good financial habits mean you're not spending lots of time figuring out where all your money's gone and figuring out how to make more. Hopefully those good habits are in place and you don't need to spend lots of time doing that. Good health habits, that means, hopefully that you've got energy to do what you want to do. You're not spending lots of time at the doctors, all that kind of stuff, right? So, what you're trying to do is take a lot of the decision making out of your day, and that's what the habits are there for. So, our brain apparently goes through 4 sort of steps every time we're trying to do a habit, right? So the first is the cue, CUE, something that tells your brain to carry out a behavior. So the brain is constantly looking around, trying to basically looking for rewards. And the cue lets your brain know that there is the potential for a reward. All right. We'll go into more detail about this later. Craving. So we've had cue, then we have craving. And that's the motivational force behind every habit. So every craving is linked to a desire to change your internal state, right? So the point here is if we look at cleaning your teeth, you're not motivated by the act of cleaning your teeth, but you're motivated by the feeling of the clean teeth that you have afterwards. So going for a run, it's not the physical movement of the run for most of us. It's the joy of being out in nature, or that satisfied feeling you have of doing something good for your body. So it's that kind of desire to change that state into something that feels good for you. Response, we've had cue, craving. Third one is response. That is the actual thing you're doing. It's usually a thought or action, the actual habit, going for the run itself, cleaning the teeth. So, but whether you do it or not depends how much friction is associated with that behavior for you and how difficult it is to do. I'm not going to get into a habit of running a marathon every day. That is too difficult for me. All right. So I'm just not going to do it. And the reward is sort of the response delivers you a reward, the end goal of every habit. So there are 4 things: cue, craving, response, reward. We're going to go into more detail in future chapters, I believe. So when it comes to the reward, it has to do 2 things. It has to satisfy the craving that we had, that need to change our state. And it needs to teach us that, what actions are worth remembering in the future. So this cue, craving, response, reward cycle is called the habit loop. And it's an end of cycle, goes round and round super fast. We don't even know it's happening, right? So this is it broken down. And the thing is, if there are any deficiencies in those 4 things, then you won't get a habit. So the 4 laws of behavioral change, according to Mr. Clear, if there is no cue, the habit will not start. If there is no craving, you won't be motivated to act. If the action is too hard or there's too much friction, you won't do it. And if the reward doesn't satisfy your craving, then you won't do it again in the future. So, in a practical sense, what does that mean for us from the knowledge we now have? We need to answer 4 questions. We need a cue. We need our cue to be obvious. So our question is, how can I make it obvious? So I'm thinking this means if we're going running, that you put your running clothes out in the morning, something like that. We'll find out when we go a bit further. We have to make the craving something attractive. So how can you make it attractive? If it's running, my guess is it's something about, or let's say exercise generally. For me, I guess the state that I want to change is to feel strong. I want to feel healthy. I want to feel that I have good, strong bones and I'm not going to get osteoporosis as I get older. I think that's what my attractiveness craving is all about. We'll find out. The response needs to be easy. So how can I make it easy to do exercise? Lots of things in there, right? Gentle build-up, getting help with it, maybe joining Good Gym, which I've talked about in the past. All of these things might help make it easy. We'll find out more. How can I make it satisfying? Well, it is definitely satisfying to me after I exercise, because I just feel, virtuous. I feel virtuous after I've done exercise, and I do feel stronger and I do feel healthier. Anyway, we'll find out more, but there are 4 questions for any habit that we're putting in. How can I make it obvious? How can I make it attractive? How can I make it easy? How can I make it satisfying? So if you want to make a start on thinking about that with some habits you already want to put in, go for it. Or you might want to wait until we get a little bit further into the book, because maybe there's some more detail that will help us think about all of those things. For now, maybe just think about what habits you do want to put in place, and then we'll figure out how we make them work. All right, have a lovely evening, and I'll see you tomorrow.